Warning! The following podcast may contain language and subject matter not suitable for all ages or everyone. If you don't like what you're listening to, please press stop. In this episode of the Changwoner Podcast.
From a small town just east of Toronto, it's called Newcastle, Ontario.
Newcastle, Ontario.
I'm originally from Huntington, West Virginia. Well, I was born in Hamlin, birthplace of Charles Yeager. Broke the sound barrier. Massage.
Yeah.
And then massage. It's a massage parlor.
Or on a menu, orange juice. It's just orange juice. Made it like an introduction lesson where we just talked and they asked me questions about Canada and I asked them questions about Korea, and it was actually like, when I walked out of there, I was really surprised by it.
You're tuned in to the Changwoner, the podcast coming to you from Changwon City, South Korea. With your hosts, Scott, Adam, and Phil.
It's the Changwoner Podcast, the podcast that brings you some of the lives of people living and working here in South Korea and in Changwon City in particular. I'm back as one of your hosts. I'm Scott, for those of you who don't know me. We're starting off a new season here, I think, say season 4 of the podcast. And I've got a couple new hosts on the show. Sitting across from me, I've got Philip Wayne Stanley. How's it going, Phil?
Scott, is going great. Thank you for having me.
And sitting beside him, we've got Adam Maxwell Kent. How's it going, Adam?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
So for this season, we've got Phil and Adam joining me on the podcast. And Dee had to leave Korea due to some family personal reasons, kind of an emergency. So not sure when or if he'll be back, but filling in for this season, we've got Phil.
Filling in.
No pun intended. And Adam. All right, so before we get started here, I'm probably going to find out a little more about you two. So let's start with Phil. Phil, where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Huntington, West Virginia. Well, I was born in Hamlin, birthplace of Charles Yeager. Broke the sound barrier. So
Charles Yeager?
Yeah, Chuck Yeager. We call him Chuck.
I thought you were going to say invented Yeager.
Jägermeister.
Yeah.
Or Yeager bombs. First one to do Yeager bomb. Original. So you're from the States then?
Yes, sir.
So when did you first come to Korea?
I was first here maybe February 2nd or 22nd, 2012.
2012. And have you lived in this area pretty much?
I've lived in JinHae my entire time here.
Okay, 2012. I lived in JinHae in 2004, so it's probably quite a bit different there.
JinHae's lovely. I mean, technically, should I be here for the Changwoner Podcast from JinHae?
JinHae is part of Korea now, or part of Changwon. So it's Changwon is what? Changwon City, Masan, and JinHae.
Yeah.
So
technically, he's the only person from Changwon.
He's on the outskirts, though. He's near the Masan border.
I'm closer to Masan, Hapsundong, than I am Changwon downtown.
Maybe we're misrepresenting ourselves.
Not really. We're kind of spread out.
Yeah.
Got all the outer skirts of the city covered. And come together.
It all counts.
On the inside. And Adam, you've been on the podcast before.
Yes, indeed.
So you're from Canada.
That's right.
Whereabouts in Canada?
From a small town just east of Toronto. It's called Newcastle, Ontario.
Newcastle, Ontario. I think every town in Canada's a small town.
Yeah.
In terms of the world, anyway.
That's true.
And you first came to Korea when?
I first came in, September of 2007. And I stayed until 2010. 2010. And then I left and I went back to Canada and I worked a job there for a little bit, didn't like it. So then I went to Europe and I moved to the Czech Republic, got my TEFL certificate and started teaching there at a private academy, which was excellent. It was fun. It was a good experience, but ultimately the money wasn't so good. So I decided to return to Korea. So on and off, I've been here for almost 7 years.
7 years. It's quite a while.
Yeah.
It's similar to me. I mean, I've been here since, I think, 2001, but I've obviously left the country here and there. I think I've probably spent about a year outside of Korea visiting back home and stuff.
Okay.
Like a month here, 2 months here. So probably it's been almost 16 years, but probably around 15 years I've actually been in the country.
Okay.
So, Phil, what made you decide to choose JinHae when you first decided to come here anyway?
Well, I have a lot of good friends that came here. Carmen De La Rosa, a good friend of mine from back home, she took summer vacation, and she told me that this is where I need to be. I'm of Korean descent. My mother's Korean, so I have family in Ujeongbu near Seoul.
Okay.
So I had some good friends in Busan, Amanda Rowe, Matt Rowe, and Jeff Duffield. And, it just felt like a good place to be for me at the time. I just finished college.
JinHae in particular, though, or?
Well, yeah, because Carmen lived in JinHae at the time. So I actually was trying to get a job with the naval base. And while I was there, my FBI background check, it had expired. So I was waiting around for that to come through, and then I got a job working at a Hagwon for a year, which was very fortunate to do. And then eventually I got a job at the Navy base in JinHae.
Cool. And Adam, what brought you to Korea your first time around? You had a brother that lived here, right?
Yeah, my brother lived here for, I think, 3 years. And then he went to New Zealand to get a working holiday visa, and he worked at various places like orchards and vineyards and things like that. Stayed there for a year. And then he came back to Canada as I was graduating university. And I didn't know what to do with my life. So he just said, why don't you just go to Korea for a year? So you make good money, it's a good experience, and you can travel around Asia really easily. And so 1 year turned into 7. But I think it's because I like it here so much. So
Snowballs quickly.
Yeah.
And did you end up choosing the Changwon area because of your brother, or was it just coincidence? Or?
Yeah, I think the first job I looked at was at JinHae. It was in JinHae. And then, you really got to do a lot of research before you work at these private academies, because some of them are really terrible, but some of them are really great as well.
Now, anyway.
Yeah, and the JinHae job, somebody told me, don't work for that person. So
a lot easier now to do the research too.
Yeah, that's right.
Back when I first came here.
Yeah, I always recommend,
I don't even think they had internet.
Yeah.
So
I always recommend people to just get the contact information of the other teachers who are working there, and then privately email them and ask them, is it a good school? Do you have any issues with payment or anything like that? And the foreign teachers, they'll tell you what's up, especially if they've been slighted.
Yeah, you want to talk to someone who's leaving.
Yeah.
Leaving the job first.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to talk to a foreigner that's staying there, is going to still be working there when you come or when they come. Because obviously it's hard to badmouth something, but you're working there.
Yeah.
And you have to work with this person, but at the same time, you don't really want to lie to them because you're going to be working with them.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Don't want to say, oh, yeah, it's awesome. Been working there a long time. Come over, you'll be working with me. It's going to be great type thing.
Yeah.
And then they show up and, the job's kind of shitty.
Yeah.
And you got to work with them.
That would spoil the working relationship, definitely.
I do it all the time. I'm always on the hunt on the internet, people looking, hey, is this school good? And yeah, it's awesome. don't even know what it is. No, I don't.
So if you see Scott, just don't listen to his advice.
Yeah.
Except for now.
So, Phil, you've been living in JinHae for, you said, around 7 years, on and off.
5 years.
5 years, sorry. Shows how much I listen.
JinHae for life.
JinHae for life. So what is it about JinHae that you like?
Well, it's just, it's quiet. Coming to Changwon, you go to Busan or Seoul, it's just busy life. In JinHae, it's just beautiful. We have the Cherry Blossom Festival, and it's the only time that place gets busy.
Yeah, it's pretty tough getting around in town.
Oh, it's asses to elbows the whole time.
That's the first week of April, right? Usually around?
It's usually the first real spring in Korea. It's sometimes it's the end of March, early April.
Yeah, I remember the 1 year that I did live in JinHae during the Cherry Blossom Festival. It was quicker just to walk wherever you want to go in town type thing.
I got on a bus maybe 2 years ago to come to Changwon, and I was on the bus for 15 minutes. I can still see my house. Like, it's madness. I think they've gotten a lot better in recent years about traveling through the city.
Yeah, they have some regulations now.
Yeah.
Like, you can't drive into the city unless you have like a JinHae residence sticker on your bumper.
It was awesome because I got one of those this year. It's like when you get your car, you get a little, I don't know, little placard, little pictures to put on the window, but no one seemed to mind, like, if you had it or not. People were still driving.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, JinHae is lovely.
All right, and speaking of, you got your driver's license in Korea, which was probably a first thing.
Yeah, I actually lived here for a couple years, and then I finally got one last year, and it's not difficult to get driver's license, but it's well worth it. Everything was in English.
If you have a car.
Yeah. Well, I mean, cars are super cheap here. I paid $900 cash for a used car from another teacher. Well, actually, it was a couple, and it was worth it. Like, you can go get groceries very easily. You know, you can go see your friends. Maybe take a small trip. I'm driving a Matisse right now, so it's
what I had. I had a Matisse too when I lived in JinHae.
Yeah.
But see, I'm the opposite. I don't recommend having a car here.
Your blood pressure goes straight through the roof.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat as Scott there. I drove here my first year. I had a company car, and it drove me up the wall every time. So I much prefer just public transportation.
For me, myself, like, I usually, if I go out, I'm probably going to have a drink or many. So there's no point in driving anyway.
But you can get the drivers. Deryunja.
Yeah, but I just assume take taxi.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't trust myself because I never put myself in that situation, but if I got really smashed, would I be like, all right, I can just get a driver? Or I'm usually more confident when I'm smashed. You know, not technically, not really, but just the way I am. So I don't know. I take taxis everywhere.
Taxis are cheap.
Buses.
Yeah, taxis are cheap.
Transportation in Korea in general
it's super reliable.
Is cheap and affordable. Where having a vehicle, I mean, parking is shit here.
Oh, I hate driving through Sangnam-dong.
Right, parking sucks. Traffic is bad. Road rage is bad, and gasoline's a fortune here.
Is it? Okay.
Well, compared to,
I think it's been like 80 a month.
Compared to Canada, gasoline's a fortune.
Mm.
So for me, it's just cheaper to taxi it. And you said buying groceries and shit. Like, usually for most teachers in Korea, a grocery store or something is walking distance.
Where I live, like, you want to go to Home Plus or Lotte Mart, like, it makes it so much easier.
Taxi. It's $2 to take a cab?
It's always been
a
big stress relief to be able to drive. Like, if I need to clear my mind, I'll just take my car down the coast and just.
Yeah, it's weird. In Canada, I love to drive. You know, I just would go out, drive for hours, get a coffee at Tim Hortons drive-through, drive around.
Yeah.
But I just don't like it here.
I want to get out of my house for a couple hours. I just,
it is good if you want to, like, go to a pension or camp or something for a weekend or get away. But other than that, I just don't see the use.
Yeah, it can also be really frustrating because a lot of people break the rules here while driving. Like, in my experience, I've seen a lot of people just run red lights. Just like, if you did that in Canada, you'd be in deep trouble. So,
well, back home in West Virginia, like, if someone doesn't immediately go on a red light, that's fine. Like, you just take your time. But, like, here, if you're like half a second when the light turns green, someone behind you is just like honking that horn.
Yeah. And, very impatient, yeah.
I think that's more just, it's common to use the horn here, where, I don't know about the States, but in Canada, it's kind of rude to use the horn unless it's like an emergency situation, so people aren't used to it.
Yeah.
But here, people use the horn for everything, you know what I mean? Like, some people honk the horn, hey, I'm turning right soon.
Yeah.
So they're honking the horn to tell you, yeah, I'm going to be turning right. It's just common use. It's not meant to be rude or anything like that.
Yeah, sometimes even taxis will honk, like, give me a little honk, like, hey, do you need a taxi? Like, I'm here. And I just, First I thought that was strange, but then I was like, oh, they're just trying to make money, right? So
So when we all first came here, there was a lot of first things of this and that. So why don't we talk a little bit about our first experiences here in Korea? So let's start off with, where was the first place that you stayed when you arrived in Korea? Starting with Phil.
I stayed with my friend Carmen. I was lucky enough to have someone who had an open couch, and I stayed on her couch for 6 months, which, I mean, that's not easy to do. She had like separate bedrooms and stuff, but like, yeah, it was a rough couple. And I thought about like waiting, and then I almost went home like before I had a job.
So when you first came here, you didn't have a job?
Well, I had a job. Like I had interviews, and my background check had expired, so I was waiting for a new one, and like I was almost defeated.
So like you paid for your flight here and just came here on your own type thing?
Okay. I never got reimbursed
Which
for it.
Which is different than others, because I was going to ask you why your school or whoever didn't hook you up.
Well, we were going through all the process, the paperwork, and my background check expired a couple days before I had the interview, and like they were going through the process, and they just decided to absorb the job instead of, waiting. So I was so defeated. I remember like, hearing the phone call and like, it's like, well, I'm gonna go get some liquor and get over this, and maybe go back home with my tail tucked between my legs. I was really fortunate. I talked to some people, and they were looking for a teacher at a private academy, and so I got a job there, and I worked under the table, which may or may not be legal. I worked there for a couple months, and then I got my visa and everything sorted out, and I reapplied for the job I have now, and everything's been great.
So your first place, you were staying at a friend that you knew.
Couching it up.
Couching. All right. And Adam, where did you first end up? Your first night in Korea, where did you stay?
My boss picked me up at JinHae Airport. We drove to Changwon. I was exhausted because it was a 14-hour flight. It was the longest flight I'd ever taken. And he just brought me to an apartment, and he said, here's your place, and you start work tomorrow. And I was like, oh, okay, that's not much time to settle in. But it was, I got to say, the first apartment was a real shithole. I didn't like it at all. But the neighbors would get drunk all the time, and they'd vomit on the stairs. And then luckily my friend who also worked at this academy, he finished his contract and left. So I was able to move into his place, which was a lot nicer and just around the corner, so it was easy to move.
So you actually had an apartment when you first got here?
Yeah, they had one ready for me. So
how was the jet lag teaching the first day?
It was pretty bad. Like I was, like especially with the time difference, the time change, or Canada's something like, or at least Toronto's something like 10 or 11 hours, or
about 12.
12 hours ahead of us.
12 to 11 and a half, depending on.
Are they? No, we're ahead of them, right?
We're ahead.
Yeah. So like with that, even when I went home for my sister's wedding, it's like you try to wake up and you try to just set a routine, but then in the middle of the afternoon you just get wiped out, like exhausted, and you just fall asleep. So.
All right. My experience was totally different when I first came here. I mean, obviously it was a long time ago, so the rules were probably a little different. When I first got here, I got picked up at the airport by my boss and brought me back to Changwon and put me in a love motel.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely.
Which was, a bit odd. Not odd, but it was the first time, like, walking in. They had those, like, Pokemon hooker cards.
Okay.
Were all over the place.
Had to catch them all.
Yeah, I just start picking them up. And for whatever reason, these places in Korea, it was the whole building, but you had to walk up to the third floor because, like, the lobby check-in place was on the third floor, not on the first floor.
Yeah.
And they had these fluorescent kind of naked girls on all the walls in the hallway that were, like, drawn, like, not actual...
Crudely drawn, like, not professional.
Painted or something. Yeah. But definitely the outlines of girls. Got my room. I had one of those love chairs in the room, which is, was a bit odd. I'm like, I didn't even know what it was when I first walked in. Mm-hmm. And spent the first night there and got picked up the next day, because the teacher I was replacing was still at the school, I was waiting for them to move out type thing.
Yeah.
But it turned out that he and I was going to live in the school. So one of the classrooms was actually in my room.
What?
Wow.
So I moved in, a day or two later after this guy moved out. And one of the classrooms was, changed into a bedroom type thing.
Wow.
I lived in the classroom in the actual English academy. And I never had a washing machine. I didn't have hot water. Didn't have a lot of things my first year here.
It's bare bones.
I got to the point where, washing clothes, I just took my basket of dirty clothes and put it in front of my director's house and had him wash my clothes every, once a week or whatever.
Yeah.
But I had to go to Jim Joe Blongs or whatever for hot showers.
Mm.
And when it was colder out, I didn't have heat, didn't have anything. But my first year here, it was fun. It was an experience. Like, I really enjoyed it. I never met a foreigner for 6 months.
I can't imagine having that experience.
And it was great. I mean, I remember going out to bars one time. I've mentioned on the podcast before, I got in a cab, didn't know where I was going. I was like, all right, just take me to a bar. And ended up going to about 9 different bars that night with the cab driver. Like bar hopping. Yeah, bar hopping with the cab driver. And there's quite a few days that I worked at like 1:30 or maybe 3, I don't know. But I just stayed in bed until the first student knocked on my door. Like, again, my bedroom was one of the classrooms.
I don't know if I could do that.
So the students would just show up, knock on the door. I'd jump out of bed, throw on some clothes, and all right, let's go.
I need that separation.
Go to the
work
classroom.
and home. Like,
pretty fast commute to work, though.
It didn't matter back then, but that was my first year here. So, and eventually, when I decided to stay year after year, I just kind of made sure things were better every year. In terms of where I live and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But how about what was your first impression when you arrived?
My first impression was, so I never traveled before coming to Korea. So it was very jarring, like, coming here. The climate, the scenery, everything was very close to West Virginia, which I felt like it helped my mother when she made the transition, because at the same time, like my age, my parents' age, they were going back. Like, my father came to Korea around my age. My mother came to the States at my age. So it was very poetic on how things had changed. And, the last time I talked to my mother, she was crying because she didn't really teach me Korean because she thought I would never come back to Korea. I came here when I was a kid, and I have very little memories of being in Korea. But everything kind of, like, it was different, but it felt somewhat familiar. Mm. So I feel like I was able to adjust quickly. I had a lot of good friends here, so I didn't really have the disconnect most people have when they come here. Like, I already knew several people. I was put into the social pipeline pretty quickly. So there was the initial shock, but then I adjusted, I think, quickly, and it's made my experience that much better.
Cool. And Adam, what was your first impression?
Let's see. Well, I was really tired, and I walked downtown to just kind of like look at things, and I was in Sangnam-dong, which is like, central downtown, I'd say, of Changwon proper. And I was just amazed at all the signs. Like, there were like 50, 60 signs on one building, and
the neon.
Yeah, and so that was pretty interesting. And then I didn't know anyone when I came, but there was a South African woman teaching at my school, and she invited me out, and she introduced me to her friends, and so that was good. And so I went out and met some other foreigners, and then within like a month or so, I had a good circle of friends.
Do you ever get that? I'm sorry, we're just writing on. I have to bring this up because when I first got here, I had students, for whatever reason, they had to write a sentence.
Yeah.
And the question was like, what color is the pen?
Mm-hmm.
And they write, pen is blue.
Penis blue.
Yes.
Penis blue.
Because they don't know where to separate words and stuff.
Yeah.
So we had penis blue.
That's pretty good.
Happens often.
Mm.
But that was the same thing for me when I first got here, was the neon and the signs. And being in Canada, I don't know about you, but for me, I wasn't used to looking up that often.
Mm-hmm.
And in Korea, there were so many places, like on the second, third, and fourth floor or whatever, and I just never looked. So I spent a good almost half a year just walking around my area, not realizing, holy shit, there's a pool hall up there on the second floor, or PC rooms and stuff like that.
It's really great when you start looking at Korean words and like you start to understand them, and you read something, you're like, massage.
Yeah.
And then it's massage. It's a massage parlor.
Or on a menu, orange juice. And it's just orange juice.
Yeah, I guess.
Like when it starts clicking, like you start seeing like all these things that you've never noticed.
Right. How long did it take you to decide to start figuring out the Korean language in terms of being able to read the alphabet?
I mean, I wanted to learn before I came here, and then I put it off. And I still struggle with studying, but the longer I've stayed here, like it's just starting to click more. I don't really know how to express myself in Korean, but
so you never learned the alphabet as a child?
No.
Like you said, your mom was.
Oh yeah, she cried when she realized I was coming here because she didn't think I would ever need it.
So she never taught
Well,
you.
my father contends that she tried to teach me when I was a child, and like I was very angry about it, which I think he's lying. But I love you, Dad and Mom.
And I was going to ask, what was your first experience or your first Korean meal or food that you had when you arrived here? Start with Adam.
My boss took me out for lunch my first day, and I should say my second day, because the first day I was just sleeping, but he took me to some fish place. I still don't even know the name of this kind of soup, but it's like a fish soup. And he said he had a terrible hangover, and he said, this is really good for a hangover. So I was like, okay, good to know. And I still go there to this day once in a while. I still don't even know what it's called. I just look at the woman and I'm like, she's like, said something, and I'm like, yeah, that one.
So some type of seafood?
Yeah, it's one of those restaurants where it's like they have a specialty and everyone orders that. Nobody orders anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, see, for me it was tough because I'm kind of allergic to seafood.
Oh, really?
Can't eat fish and shit.
Oh, that's too bad.
So I was a little worried about that. And the area I lived in was quite poor when I first arrived. And didn't know where to go or what to eat. There was no like McDonald's or anything around in the area I was when I first arrived. Not like now where...
Everywhere.
I mean, there's so many options for foreigners now in terms of food and fast food restaurants and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
Even the like the local convenience stores, they didn't have anything really. Everything was just Korean, you know what I mean? Like beer, the only option was Height.
There's no imports
and stuff. No, there was nothing. Chips and stuff where everything had squid on it or something like that. I just didn't know what to eat. And I can't remember to this day what first Korean food I had. It was probably samgyeopsal or meat, you know, something
like a welcoming
that
dinner
I could eat.
Yeah.
How about you? What was the first meal?
The first thing I had, so I was a bit jet lagged, and you know, it was maybe noon, but it felt like it was, you know, midnight. And my friend Carmen took me to a budae-jjigae restaurant, which it originated from my mother's hometown, Ujeongbu. And budae-jjigae is one of those things where like you're watching them make it, and you're like, nah, I'm not gonna eat that. It's got hot dogs, spam, beans, kimchi, all kinds of vegetables, noodles, and it just looks horrible.
That's the soldier soup, right?
Yeah. It's because it was after the war that all the surplus food was given to the people and just to feed them, and they would make a stew out of it. And so I'm sitting there looking at them making it. I'm like, there's no way this is any good. And then you take your first bite, and it's just so flavorful. And since then, like, if I go to a restaurant, I will try anything now because you have this preconceived notion of like what you will eat or what you won't eat. And it just like opened up everything for me. So like that was the best thing in my situation to have, because it just looked like it was just a mess of food, and it just worked so well together.
Yeah. And let's talk about your first day of teaching. Do you remember? For myself, I don't specifically remember the first day I ever taught. I had some teaching experiences, back in Canada. Like I was a TA in university and taught some computer classes, but I didn't have any experience when I first came here, and was kind of just thrown in a classroom. But before I get into that, let's start with Adam. What was your first day of teaching like?
Yeah, I had no experience teaching, no training. And my boss picked me up and he said, okay, we're going to go to this coffee place. It's like a coffee factory, Maxim Coffee. That's out near Palyandong. Yeah. And we get out of the car and he walks in with me, and I thought, oh, maybe he'll just like introduce me to someone or, get something established. But he hands me a green activity book, and he goes, all right, you got to go teach these guys. I'll be back in 2 hours. And I was like, what? And I walk in, and it's this huge boardroom, and it's all these guys, like company workers.
So you taught adults.
Yeah, they were like, a lot of them were like probably twice my age, and I was like 23 at the time. And I sat down, and I was scared shitless, but then I basically just winged it, and I just made it like an introduction lesson where we just talked, and they asked me questions about Canada, and I asked them questions about Korea. And it was actually like, when I walked out of there, I was really surprised by how I did it, because I thought it was going to be a disaster.
Yeah. And how about you, Phil? What was your first day of teaching like?
Well, I can remember like the first day of training, which
training.
It was the guy leaving, the Hagwon. So like he's having these like parties with kids. Like one class they have McDonald's, another class they just eat candy, and like all the kids are really happy. And the next day, I'm supposed to teach out this book that I'd see the first day, and the kids were just so disappointed the whole time, just like looking at me like, "Where's our McDonald's? Where's our candy?" I'm like, I don't know. Like, let me get one of the other teachers in here. And at first it was really overwhelming, because like you have to learn this whole curriculum, and it's each book is different, but once you settle in, you make it your own. You make it your own class, and they adapt to you. I think that's the biggest lesson you learn is, whatever you're teaching, whatever you're good at, you play to your strengths and you let the kids work around you.
Yeah. When I first got here, the school, the actual English Academy was like on the 5th floor of this kindergarten school, and one of the classrooms was actually done up like McDonald's. Like it had a counter with the McDonald's menu on the wall and stuff like that. But it was me and one Korean teacher, and I had to pick all of the books and stuff to use. Like it wasn't really taught anything, and I just got put in this classroom with these little, probably 7-8-year-old kids, and didn't know what I was doing. Just opened up the book, but it was actually, like Adam said, it was quite easy. I started off with kids and not adults. I did teach adults later on, and there is a big difference.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a difference between a bunch of people that don't want to learn.
Or forced to be there, essentially.
Yeah.
Your mother's son, you go.
The difference between that and obviously people that want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I realized my first couple of years here, my English is quite shit in terms of, I don't know grammar, I don't know what the hell this means.
Or explaining why a preposition is used in certain cases.
I don't even know what that is. I still don't. And I don't know how to spell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I remember teaching in JinHae, like adults at, it might have been STX or the Army base, I'm not sure. But like, the word precious came out, and I wrote it on the board, and one of the students like put their hands up. I don't think that's how you spell precious.
Then how do you spell it? Correct. You get an extra point.
No, I usually
You're
just
testing them.
Yeah.
I always pull off in Canada we spell it this way. But
Well, in Canada we don't know how to spell.
American, this is how you spell it.
Yeah.
But and it took me a long while to get over the difference of like American spelling and Canadian spelling.
With the U's.
Yeah.
Why is there so many U's?
Like now I'm used to color, just COLOR.
The correct way.
No. But anyway, yeah, that's just the way it is. And it's sometimes it's better just getting thrown into the mix and figuring it out yourself.
Yeah.
Trial by fire.
I quickly realized it didn't really matter, you know. When I first came here, it was more you were a foreign face, and that's all they.
Well, I'm not.
All they needed type thing. Well, again, this was 16 years ago.
When I was looking for a job, I did an interview, like a phone interview, and then they're like really pleased and like they were going to hire me for this job. And then they saw my picture and they're like, no, you don't have a foreign face. And I was crushed. Like, you know, I am Korean, so I thought that it would go well here. And then my first rejection from a job, a real job, was because I wasn't foreign enough.
Yeah, well, I can see that.
Yeah.
But when I first got here, that's, you know, it didn't matter what your abilities were and shit like that. It was just, all right, you're a foreigner. We just want your face on everything. And
I think it is a lot sink or swim, not only for teaching, but like work ethic. Like Koreans have a pretty strong work ethic. I remember my brother telling me a new teacher showed up at his school when he was here, and the guy didn't show up one day. And so my brother's boss said, where is this guy? You know, like I've been waiting for him all morning. So my brother calls the guy, and he goes, where are you? You're supposed to be at the school teaching right now. And the guy's like, yeah, I know, but I had to get my hair cut. And then he was probably fired after that, you know.
It better have been a really good haircut.
maybe. Back in the day, it was really difficult to get fired.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, there wasn't many options, and the school spent so much money getting you here.
Yeah.
You know, you literally, unless you're a criminal of some kind.
Yeah, unless you're, a real...
I don't know too many people that's ever been fired from a job.
Yeah, I do. In the last few years, it's quite more common.
Just show up and do your job.
Yeah,
you know?
There's not much to it.
For some people, it's not that easy, I guess.
Yeah.
No idea why, but anyway, we're going to wrap things up. So, Phil, how can people get in touch with you if they want?
I'm on Facebook, Philip Wayne Stanley, and I guess I'm on Instagram, Phil Way Stan.
All right, and Adam?
I'm on Facebook, Adam Maxwell Kent. I'm on Instagram, I think is Ever Stalwart. And
yeah, what does that mean?
It's from a Coen Brothers film, you know, True Grit.
Yeah.
At one point, Matt Damon's character, he's like riding away on a horse dramatically, and he's like, Ever Stalwart. So, and stalwart means like very reliable, dependable, things like that. And I'm at Changwoner.com, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, so both these guys, you can email them now at phil@changwoner.com or adam@changwoner.com. And you can get in touch with me, any social media, just at Changwoner or scott@thechangwoner.com.
Okay, so 10-4, good buddy. Over and out.
Catch you next week.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to the Changwoner Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode.